Welcome to the world of Sci-Fi Stories, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and share the channel. Enjoy the listening. Aliens analyzed a human ship, and their worst fears came true. The alien scientists had seen countless wrecks before, but this one was different. It wasn't just another derelict ship. Drifting through space, another failed expedition lost to the void. No, this was something new, something terrifying. The vessel had been discovered near the edge of the Fawn Empire's territory, a burnt husk tumbling. In silence, its hull was scared with plasma burns, jagged breaches exposing dark corridors inside. No distress beacon, no active life signs to the F-Trun. This was an opportunity. The humans were a recent species on a galactic stage, still primitive compared to the great empires, yet aggressive and unpredictable. Analyzing this wreck could provide valuable intelligence. A team of Fawn scientists, escorted by a squad of heavily armed soldiers, boarded the ruined ship. Their elongated forms moved with cautious grace, kittish limbs clicking softly against the metal. The airlock groaned as they forced it open, revealing the darkened corridor beyond. Their translator units crackled with static, scanning for any recognizable human language, but the ship was silent. The lead scientist Vec activated his data recorder. We are now inside the human vessel. Structural integrity is compromised, but portions remain intact. Beginning analysis. They moved forward, scanning the walls. Human writing and insignias lined the corridors, symbols foreign yet highly efficient. The lighting flickered, casting long shadows. The ship had endured a battle, but against what? Then they found the first body. It was lumped against the wall, a human in a shredded suit. The sight made even the hardened soldiers hesitate. Humans were resilient creatures, built for endurance, but this one had been torn apart, not by energy weapons or traditional blade wounds, but something else, something brutal. VC crouched beside the corpse, his mandibles twitching strange. The wound suggests physical trauma. Claws, perhaps impossible. One of the soldiers replied. What could do this to them? Aboard their own ship, they pressed on, navigating the ruined corridors. Blood spattered the walls in patterns that suggested struggle. Weapons lay discarded, some still clutched in cold, stiff fingers. It was becoming clear whatever had attacked the humans, they had fought back savagely. Then they reached the control room. The command console was smashed, but a flickering screen remained active. Velik accessed it, bypassing human security with ease. The logs were fragmented, but he managed to pull audio from the last transmission. A human voice crackled through the speakers, ragged, filled with desperation and fury. If you're hearing this, you already know they came aboard. We fought, we won. But if you're here, that means you don't understand what that means. This isn't over. Get off the ship. Get off. Now the message cut out. Silence filled the control room. Rick's secondary hearts beat faster. The humans had won. Against what? Then from the depths of the ship, something moved, a scraping sound, slow, deliberate. The Fawn soldiers raised their weapons. Their infrared scanners picked up something shifting in the darkness beyond the roof room. Not human, not anything in their databases. Then the lights flickered again, and something laughed. It was not a sound of amusement. It was low, guttural, and filled with menace. It was a sound that did not belong aboard a derelict human ship. The Fawn had thought they were here to study human weakness. Instead, they had just awakened something worse. The laugh echoed through the corridors, bouncing off the scorched metal walls like a mocking whisper. The Phelan soldiers shifted uneasily, their weapons tracking every shadow, mandibles clicking in nervous anticipation. Valak, still hunched over the console, felt his kittish fingers tremble. We fought, we won. The words from the human transmission lingered in his mind. If they had won, where were the victors? And more importantly, what had they been fighting? A static-laced beep came from one of the solders. Scanners movement detected unknown life form 30 meters ahead. The squad's leader, a hardened warrior named Krelvox, adjusted his grip on his weapon. Advance carefully, tight formation. They moved forward, deeper into the ship's broken spine. The walls bore even more claw marks, deep Gouges ripped through reinforced alloy. Plating that alone was unsettling. Flan. Armor technology was advanced, but even their ships couldn't be torn apart like this. Whatever did this possessed terrifying strength. Then they found another body. This one was different, not human. It was a creature of some kind. Its body slumped against a wall riddled with gunfire. Wounds, ragged, unnatural limbs stuck out at odd angles. Its exoskeleton cracked open like shattered stone. Even in death, its elongated mouth remained open, a row of serrated teeth frozen in a twisted snarl. Lick felt his stomach tighten. This was not in any galactic records. The creature was utterly foreign. Kelox nudged the body with his weapon. It didn't move. This is what they fought. Another soldier examined it with his scanner. Biology unknown, no DNA match, armor plating reinforced with organic material. But whatever they were, the humans killed them. V's mind raced. Not just kill, they won against these things. His words sent a ripple of unease through the squad. The Phelan had always believed humans were reckless, undisciplined creatures. They had technology inferior to most major civilizations, yet they expanded, aggressively fought wars they shouldn't have won, and survived where logic dictated they should perish. Yet here was proof a battle had taken place aboard this ship. The humans had fought something monstrous, and somehow the humans had been the ones left standing. A cold realization settled over them. If these creatures had torn through human defenses, but were ultimately defeated, what did that say about humanity's true nature? Before anyone could answer, a deafening thud came from deeper within the corridor. Then another something was coming. The Phelan raised their weapons as the shadows ahead shifted. A figure stepped forward, slow and deliberate. Not an alien monstrosity, not a Phelan warrior, a human. The figure was tall, broad-shouldered, clad in torn armor, marked with burns and blood stains. His face was obscured by a cracked helmet, but his stance spoke volumes. Relaxed, almost casual, as if he had been waiting for them. Frolic took an instinctive step back. How are you still alive? The human tilted his head slightly, as if considering the question. Then, in a voice hoarse from exhaustion, but laced with grim amusement, he said, "Because we don't lose." Then the lights flickered, and the real nightmare began. The lights flickered wildly, casting erratic shadows that danced along the corridor walls. The fallen soldiers tightened their formation, weapons trained on the lone human. Standing before them, his armor was battered, cracked in places, and streaked with both human and alien blood. Yet, despite the damage, he stood with eerie confidence, calm, steady, unshaken. The air was thick with tension. Krulvox, the squad leader, took a cautious step forward, mandibles twitching. "Identify yourself, human," he demanded, his voice sharp with authority. The human exhaled slowly. The faint hum of his armor's failing systems buzzed through the air. His helmet's visor was cracked, revealing only glimpses of his face through the damaged glass. Then he spoke. "You shouldn't be here." His voice was low, rough with exhaustion, yet there was something else beneath it, something unspoken that made the alien soldiers hesitate. A warning. Firk's secondary hearts pounded as he scanned the man. His suit was failing, his body was under extreme duress. By all logic, he should have been dead, yet he wasn't. The scientist's mind raced. Humans were known to be physically durable, capable of surviving extreme conditions beyond what their physiology should allow. But this was something else. Kirks didn't lower his weapon. "We are here to investigate this wreck. You are the only surviving member of your crew. We require information." The human let out a breath, shaking his head. "You don't want information, you want to understand." VC's mandibles twitched. "Yes, that is the nature of research." A grim chuckle escaped the human's lips. "Then you should leave while you still can." And then the corridor shook. A deep, resonant thud echoed through the ship, vibrating through the metal flooring. It wasn't the sound of something external impacting the vessel. It was coming from inside, from below. The Feltran soldiers shifted uneasily, their scanners flaring to life. Movement detected. One of them hissed, "It's big." The human's posture didn't change. Instead, he calmly turned his head towards the floor, as if listening. Then he looked back at them. "You brought two Many people, he said flatly. Krellvox's mandibles flared in anger. Explain yourself, human. The man exhaled. You're making noise. It hears you. The corridor lights pulsed again. The air grew thick, heavy. The shadows at the far end of the corridor stretched unnaturally, as if bending towards them. Then the laughter returned, low, hollow, predatory. The true and warriors reacted instantly. Weapons raised, scanners sweeping the darkened hallway ahead. But there was nothing, no distinct shape, no enemy to fire upon, just a creeping, suffocating presence that clawed at their nerves. VC felt something primal coil inside him, a fear deeply rooted in evolution itself, the same fear their ancestors had once felt when hiding from things lurking in the deep oceans of their home world. Kelox turned back to the human, his patience burning away. What is that? The man's cracked visor reflected the dim flickering, like the reason we never sent a distress signal. A sharp scraping sound filled the air like claws dragging against metal. Then the lights died completely. In the absolute darkness, the human spoke one last time. You should have listened. And the screaming began. The screams echoed through the pitch black corridor, sharp and guttural. The fawn soldiers fired blindly into the dark, plasma bolts lighting the shadows for split seconds before vanishing again. Each burst illuminated glimpses of something moving, something fast. Frick crouched low behind a console, clutching his data recorder. His mandibles trembled as he watched through the flickering light. He couldn't see the creature, only the aftermath. One of the soldiers was ripped from formation, dragged screaming into the blackness. His weapon clattered to the floor, firing a final burst into the ceiling before the sound of tearing flesh filled the air. Krellvox barked orders, but panic had already set in. This ship is compromised, the squad leader growled. Fall back, regroup at the airlock. The remaining soldiers stumbled backward. Weapons raised. The corridor felt smaller, like the walls were pressed in, suffocating them. Only the human remained. Still, VC's multifaceted eyes flicked toward him, his mind racing. The man stood in the middle of the chaos, unmoving, head tilted slightly as if listening. You can't run from it, the human muttered. Krellvox's mandible snapped in frustration. Then what is it? What are we fighting? The human cracked visor turned towards the squad lead, his breath slow and steady. You scanned this ship the moment you docked, right? Frick hearts thudded. Of course, they had standard protocol. The scanners had picked up bodies, both human and unknown, but no active life signs, no zoo survivors. The human's voice cut through the chaos. The scanners don't pick it up. Another soldier was dragged screaming into the shadows, gone before anyone could react. It's not alive the way you think. Thick's mind scrambled to understand. His hands flew to his scanner, recalibrating for every frequency, infrared, ultraviolet, bioelectric signals, but there was nothing, no heat, no movement. Yet the creature was there. Krellvox's patience snapped. He raised his weapon towards the human. You will tell us what we're facing, or I will kill you myself. The human didn't flinch. He only exhaled slowly, like a man who had already seen the worst the universe could offer. You won't get the chance. The temperature dropped. The shadows thickened. The creature was close. Now so close Vec could feel it pressing against his mind like a cold whisper, burrowing into his thoughts. Fallon physiology was highly advanced, logical, calculating, but fear was universal, and this was something older than logic. The human took a slow step forward. They sent us to study the planet near this system, he said quietly. There was something buried there, something waiting. His gloved hand hovered over his shattered sidearm, fingers steady despite the tremor in the air. We woke it up. Krellvox's mandibles flared, disbelief flickering through his cold black eyes. A myth, another primitive human superstition. The human's lips curled beneath his helmet. Yeah, we thought that too. The darkness behind them shifted. Something breathed. One of the soldiers opened fire, and the shadows tore him apart. Blood splattered across the walls. The others scrambled back, weapons firing wildly. VC's mind reeled. The Fallon Empire had cataloged thousands of species across The galaxy they had studied predators on countless worlds, but this was something wrong. His translator flickered, parsing fragments of human language from the ship's logs. Entity classified unknown, threat level red. Engage at own risk. Do not isolate. Do not run. Do not let it hear you breathe. X's mandibles clicked in panic. His eyes snapped back to the human you killed. These creatures, the man's visor flicked toward him, cracked glass hiding eyes that had seen too much. No, he stepped forward slowly, weapon raised. We survive them. The laughter returned closer now. It echoed from every direction, wrapping around them like invisible claws. Kelox raised his weapon to fire, and the human slammed his gauntleted hand down on the barrel, forcing it towards the floor. Stop shooting, he growled. It likes the noise. Krellvox's mandible snapped in rage. You are not in command here, human. The man's head tilted slowly toward him. I'm the only reason you're still breathing. Another soldier was dragged into the blackness, his screams cutting off as wet crunching filled the air. The human leaned close to Krellvox's face plate, his breath fogging the alien's visor. You wanted to know what humans fear. He stepped back into the shadows, voice low. We fear nothing. We just fight harder when we're afraid. The ship groaned around them. The shadows closed in, and Valak finally understood. They had come to study human weakness. They had walked straight into the proof that humans were the most dangerous species in the galaxy. The air was thick with the stench of death. The fun soldiers, once disciplined and methodical, had lost all cohesion. They were firing wildly into the dark, wasting energy cells on shadows that refused to die. Frick huddled against the bulkhead, his mind spiraling into panic. His species had studied warfare for centuries, had conquered lesser civilizations with precise efficiency, but this was something else, something beyond control, something that laughed as it hunted them. The human moved with eerie calm, unholstering his sidearm. Despite its damage, he checked the charge, a small, almost meaningless action in the face of what surrounded them. But it spoke volumes. He wasn't panicking. He was planning. VC clung to that realization, desperate for something, anything to make sense. How did your crew stop it? He rasped, his voice barely a whisper. The human exhaled, his gaze locked on the shifting darkness. We didn't. Frolic stomach churned. But you won. The human didn't look at him. Winning is different from surviving. Then the ship lurched. Something massive slammed into the walls, bending metal inward with a sickening screech. The lights flickered again, but this time they didn't come back. The emergency power grid was failing. Vax translator spat out corrupted words from the human log. Ship integrity compromised. Containment breach. No way. Off. The Fuan squad leader Krellvox turned on the human, mandibles flaring. You let us board this ship knowing what was inside. The human finally looked at him. His expression was unreadable beneath the fractured visor. You didn't listen. Kelox lunged, claws grabbing the front of the man's armor. We are the Truan Empire. We do not run from the unknown. The human's fingers tightened around his sidearm. Then you die with it. Another soldier vanished, yanked backward so fast that only his shriek remained. Blood sprayed across the bulkhead, the pattern twisting as if something unseen licked it away. VC couldn't breathe. The human pushed Krellvox hands aside and turned toward the control panel. Sparks flickered as he worked, overriding the manual systems with quick, practiced movements. Frick found his voice. What are you doing? The man didn't look up. I set the reactor to blow when I made my last stand. He gestured to the darkness around them. Didn't kill it, but it hurt. Frick's mandibles twitched. You damaged it. The human's lips curled. Everything bleeds. The ship shuddered. A new sound joined the whisper, something angry, a growl that vibrated in their bones. Krellvox's eyes darted around wildly. We must escape. The human chuckled, a bitter, almost amused sound. Funny, that's what the rest of my crew said. He yanked a final lever. The emergency lights flickered red. A robotic voice warped from damage echoed through the corridor. Warning, core meltdown imminent to -10 minutes until detonation. The shadow screamed. Kelox recoiled. You're killing us all. The human turned to face him fully, his visor cracked but his stance unshaken on killing it. Frick realized what was happening. The human wasn't trying to escape, he had never planned to. This was his final battle. The shadows began moving fast. The human tossed something toward VC, his data slate. The fawn scientist barely caught at his claws, fumbling with the foreign tech. You want to understand humanity, the human said, voice grim. Take that, get out of here. Frick stared with the human's gaze locked onto him. Run. Then he turned and charged into the darkness, firing. As he went, the F-Tron soldiers hesitated only for a second, then finally they ran behind them. The human's voice echoed through the doomed ship, laughter and gunfire mixing as he met the nightmare head on. Come on, then let's see if you can finish what you started. The last thing Valak saw before the airlock sealed behind them, before their shuttle ejected into the black, was the ship detonating in a flash of fire. And like the human had won by making sure nothing walked away, the shuttle tumbled through space, battered by the shock wave of the explosion. Fire and debris expanded outward from the wrecked human ship, a bright, furious testament to one man's final stand. VC clutched the data slate against his chest, mandibles clicking in a frenzied rhythm. His breath came in rapid bursts, his secondary hearts still hammering from the escape around him. The surviving Phalan soldiers were silent, their exoskeletal bodies trembling. The nightmare should have been over, but it wasn't, because the laughter hadn't stopped. It was faint now, barely a whisper against the static of the comms. But it was there, impossibly. There, a lingering echo of something that should have burned away with the human sacrifice. Rick scrambled toward the ship's controls, his claws dancing over the interface. Scan for life signs, he ordered. His voice wavered, but he forced himself to focus. One of the soldiers hesitated. The human is gone. The creature scanned the console, flickered, reading the drifting debris field. The explosion had been absolute. Nothing recognizable remained of the human ship. No escape pods, no structural fragments larger than a bulkhead panel. It was total destruction. And yet the scanner beeped. Frick felt a cold dread coil around his spine. One signal, faint, unreadable. Moving. KR Vox, recovering from the shock, forced himself upright. What is it? Frick didn't answer. He enhanced the reading, filtering out the interference from the explosion. The result made his chitin tighten. The signal wasn't coming from the wreckage, it was coming from inside their shuttle. A sharp thud echoed from the rear compartment. The soldiers reacted instantly. Weapons raised. Keylocks let out a guttural hiss, his fear barely masked by aggression. Seal that door. One of the soldiers moved towards the control panel, but he never made it. The lights flickered. The laughter grew louder, and then something answered it. Not a human voice, not the monster from the ship. Something else, something they had brought with them. The fawn had come to study humanity's weaknesses. Instead, they had unleashed something that should have stayed buried. VC clutched the human data slate, his fingers trembling. His translator finally decoded the final entry in the ship's logs. One last chilling warning from the man who had given his life to stop this nightmare. You can't kill it, you can only burn everything around it. And pray that's enough. If you're hearing this, it's already too late. The laughter turned into a scream and the lights went out.